I'm so glad that we're having this conversation, Jody, because I think that in this crazy time we're in where we can't meet together and do that thing that we do, it might be interesting for people to hear how we do and behind the scenes of our process. And you and I interact a lot with our work.
Yeah, look, anytime, any opportunity I have to be in conversation with you, Tinashe, I'm in, so I'm here, even though I hate this, I'm good. So can I start us off with a little story about you? In 2005, the Alliance was producing the 20th anniversary production of 𝗰𝘀𝘁𝗶𝗴's Blues for an Alabama Sky. Kenny had actually directed the original world premiere production in 1995 that some of you who have been around as long as I have might remember. It starred 𝗰𝘀𝘁𝗶𝗴, who later came back to do Medea with us. But back to 2005, Susan Booth, our current artistic director, was directing this anniversary production. I had just cast a show with Kenny for True Colors, and I had the great pleasure of meeting for the first time this amazing actress, Tinashe. And I think you and Keith, your husband Keith, had just moved to Atlanta, and Kenny knew you. And I remember thinking at that very moment you auditioned, and I just thought, oh my God, Atlanta just got an A+ actor. And I found Delia. And so the Delia. So I went to Susan and I said, you've got to meet her. You're going to love her. Of course she did. And the rest is history.
That was just one of the most memorable audition experiences for me, because I remember hearing that you guys were doing the show, and like you said, I was new to town. I had sent you my headshot and resume, and I was just so convinced that you were only going to be getting offer only. So thank you for calling me in for that. I think I wore a blue dress. But the interesting thing about that story is that Keith and I had just moved from LA, and the last show I had done was Crumbs from a Table of Joy by Lynn Nottage with Deidre Henry. And Deidre Henry had played Delia in your original production that Kenny Leon directed. And this is how small our circles are. So she was a good friend, an artistic mentor to me. And cut to this year, we had cast her as Cynthia in our production of Sweat that we were gonna do, that unfortunately got canceled because of our current crisis. But this just tells you the story of just how full circle things can be. And our business is so much about relationships, and the community gets smaller and smaller because you just work with so many people the longer you're in it.
I want to ask you something as a director, if I may. Back to the idea of working with actors a lot. Directors like to work with actors that they know, versus working with new talent, someone you've never worked with before, whether that is somebody that is a seasoned actor or just brand new and green. What is that process? What's the difference? What is that process like, those two processes?
I think when you are working with an actor that you have already gotten to know, you have this shared vocabulary as a director so that you're not having to teach them your process. And they're kind of your ace in the hole, if I may say. They're kind of an anchor in your ensemble because you have this shorthand. And having that person in the room that knows you, that you trust, and is going to jump on the train with you can be really empowering. But at the same time, for me as a director, I intentionally look for actors that I haven't worked with before. I think it keeps me honest about the questions I'm asking. It keeps me, it challenges me to always rethink what my process is, so I don't get stuck in a rut of the way that I do things. Because they're asking new questions, and they're bringing new ideas and experiences to the room.
Remember Nick's Flamingo Grill, those were all new actors to you as well. I mean, I think you knew some of them, but you had never worked with any of them. But
Jody, the thing that was different with Nick's was that, yes, it was a whole bunch of new actors, but we were working with a script that was still in process. Wouldn't you say that when you're creating your casting call and we're creating our breakdown, the one thing we hope for is that we know exactly who these actors and characters are. But we were playing with a script that, while the characters were definitively there, 𝗰𝘀𝘁𝗶𝗴, our playwright, was still fine-tuning the events, and therefore how these characters responded to the events, and therefore who they were. And for our first draft of Nix, one of the characters' name was Truck, right?
Truck. He was supposed to look like a truck.
Supposed to look like a truck, and you kept bringing in these big old, not big old, but you kept bringing in these big actors who also had to be able to sing, and we were trying to figure out, well, what does a human truck really look like? Can we find this truck? And we were having such a hard time finding that, and 𝗰𝘀𝘁𝗶𝗴 finally said, okay, you know what, this is the essence of him, but I'm going to change his name so it doesn't limit you. And pretty soon after that, Jimmy Kiefer came to audition. I can't remember how he came on. How was it that you found Jimmy?
It was Jimmy had actually been, believe it or not, many years ago was an intern, an acting intern when we had an intern company at the Alliance. He was an acting intern, had been in New York for all these years, and called me up, Jody, I'm moving back to town. I hope something's going on that I might be right for it. I'm like, oh my God, Jimmy, your truck. You're not Ben, which was the new character. Your truck. He's 6'3". He's got this gorgeous voice. And it was like, whew, we got our guy.
So Jody, one of the things that always surprises me is that I can come to your office and say, hey, I'm looking for an actor who looks like this and sounds like that. Do you have them? And you'll say, yes, look in the third drawer down. And I am so impressed by how you keep track of all these actors. How do you find actors? How do you sort through them when you get a breakdown? And how are you doing that in this new age where you're not in your office?
Well, I don't know if I can answer all of that, but because somebody is going to be saying, okay, this is too long, girls. But I will give you a brief rundown of the process. There are kind of three avenues, three ways to get into the Alliance Theater as an actor, to be seen and considered at the Alliance. One is I see every show I possibly can that's happening around town, which is a joy. I'm doing that looking for, number one, new talent, people I don't know, but also to see people I do know so that I can gives me information so that when I'm working with directors, specifically out-of-town directors who don't know our talent pool at all, it gives me a lot of information about every actor that I bring in for them, even though I may know them, they don't. I will have probably about 4 a year, big general auditions where people submit headshots and resumes, and I'll call them in for a day or two, and they'll do general auditions, which are contrasting monologues, or they'll sing. Gives me a chance to see their level of talent and technique. And the problem right now is, then there's a third avenue that I really love. There are tons of amazing intern and apprentice acting programs in the city. And every year I invite them to come in and I do an audition work session, and I get to know those actors who most of them have committed to staying in Atlanta. So it's a great resource. But what's happening right now is it's springtime. So I would be thick in general auditions right now. I'd be seeing people all the time right now, getting ready for casting next season, but we can't be in the same room. So I'm trying to work out a process of video auditioning. And luckily, I've asked Tinashe, I've asked you to do a kind of primer, if you will, a little video to help people know better how to tape their auditions, a tutorial to tape their auditions, because it's two different mediums. Yeah, it's an odd time we're in. If you were in my office at the theater right now, my walls would be full of headshots and resumes, and that's how I remember them, because I look at them every day, all day. And so I can see them and know, "Oop, that's a good match. But yeah, now it's going to be via video, but thank you for that. I appreciate your helping me there.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people who like to come to the theater, and they know that a lot of actors work in both the theater and television and film, but they are such different mediums that we have to adjust our craft for that medium. But when you're asking an actor to audition for a play on camera, sometimes it can be a little jarring. And so we're always wanting artists to feel like they're still embodying their character and we're seeing plenty of them in the screen, but that they're not feeling that they're having to limit themselves or make themselves smaller just because it's an on-camera audition. So it's going to be a tricky time making sure that as you're watching tapes, that you also take into consideration that actors are trying to adapt and not quite sure how much they should adapt.
Yeah.
I do think that the artists here in Atlanta are the best prepared for that because we do this all the time, but it will also be a real clear reminder that the magic of theater can never be captured on camera because it's that exchange, it's that conversation, it's that breathing the air with your audience, that give and take. And I know all of us are adaptable because that's what artists do, but we will use these auditions to keep our craft sharp and to keep in process so that when we do reopen and get back together, our tools are sharp and we're ready just to get out and continue creating, which is what I'm most excited about.